devastating outside back who was as big as any forward and could run like the wind. Man of the match in the first ever State of Origin game back in 1980 and notching up 14 caps in the Queensland jersey. Managing the Maroons for a few years, the former Wandai Wolf and Cunnamulla Ram is one of the most passionate Queenslanders you'll ever meet. Chris Choppy Close. I think, my first Origin experiences were having you as manager, mate, and there were some great days, mate, some good memories.
Yeah, good for me as well, mate. It's great to be here with you, mate, and go through the story, the country roads. But certainly, mate, we've had a long history and with the same club as well,
That's
with Redcliffe. And I know we're both supporters of that club, mate.
That's it.
It's lovely to be here with you, mate.
Thanks, mate. So I'll take you back, mate. So born in Rocky, mate?
Yeah, mate, Rockhampton.
And then where did the family go from there? So Rocky?
Yeah, Dad was a policeman. He got a transfer down to Harvey Bay, and we moved down to Harvey Bay, and I started school at Harvey Bay at Pyalba in grade 1, and that was where I launched my rugby league career, mate, back in those early days. There was no junior league back then. It was just school league. People played at the school, and the junior league came a little bit after that. But for me, my first encounter with rugby league was at school. And a funny story, mate, I was probably not supposed to be at the footy training that day. I should have caught the bus home and went straight home, but I heard my brother say that he was going to be playing and training that day at the school after school, so I didn't get on the bus, and I went down, I hid behind a tree, and while they were training, I don't know what come over me, but one of the guys was running with the ball, and I just flew out from behind the tree and dead set smashed him, just cleaned him up. He didn't see me coming. The ball went in the air, and he's laying on the ground, and I got to my feet, and I heard my brother say, "That's my brother, kill him." And then anyway, they chased me, and I made it to the front of the school, flew out the gate just as my father pulled up in the police car, and that was another mistake. He said, "Get in. Where have you been? What have you been doing?" So I got to hiding either way. It didn't matter. But that was my first introduction to the game, and it just lit that little fire that has burned ever since.
I guess from those early beginnings, how did you go into junior footy from there? You signed up to play?
Yeah, look, we moved again. Shortly after that, we went to Proston, which is a little community out in the South Burnett area, and played obviously at the school there, and then started with Wandai Wolves as a junior league. So my dad, as I said, was a policeman, and he had a couple of things available to him. One was a car, and the other was the fuel. So about 6 or 7 of us used to load up into the police car, and a couple of days a week, and Dad would take us into Wandai, and we joined the Wandai club and started playing in that local competition. Way back in the late 60s, sort of early 70s.
Mate, they must have been great memories, as a little fella jumping in the car with everyone. And I've actually been talking to a lot of our Origin legends and talking about those days of those memories of packing up the car and these adventures that they'd go on, to all these different places.
Absolutely, and not only for us as a player, as a young fella as a player. My mum and dad, are very keen on making sure we're involved from a community point of view, and rugby league was a great Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. We'd get in that car, and Mum would make a picnic, and we'd all go to the footy, and half the time she'd be feeding 10, 15 people out of the back of the car, and I used to sit and watch the local players play, and my brother was involved in the under-17s, and I watched him transition into A grade.
Awesome,
so I really had local heroes. I had guys that I couldn't wait to go every weekend with Mum and Dad, and we travelled to all the different towns that were in the competition. Places like Kingaroy and Mergen and Anango and Kilkeven, Blackbutt, those places. So they were great opportunities for me to form that community bond around rugby league too, and see how that really enhanced the community and become part of the fabric.
Mate, of all those little adventures, mate, did you have a favourite place you love to get to? Was there a favourite
Wandai was the favourite ground. Wandai had a magnificent rugby league oval. It was round. the surface was always fantastic. That little grandstand there, and I had access to everywhere. I could go in the dressing shed if I wanted to, and nobody would kick you out. And I'd go in there and watch the men put their studs on. And we never had studs back then. As a kid, we played barefoot, so that was just amazing to be in that environment and to see how they approached it. And these were local guys that did all sorts of different things through the week, and they come together on the weekend, and that game of rugby league was their focus, and that's where they let all their anger and their passion out, and we loved it. We just loved it. We'd go out and sit on the sidelines, and people would park their cars around the field, and whenever everyone scored a try, they'd blow the horn, so you could blow the horn the longest and the loudest. It was just an amazing, colourful weekend every weekend.
It has an impact on you as a young fella, doesn't it? It's when you're talking, then I'm in my head, I'm imagining like the sensory overload, of being in the dressing room, smelling the liniment,
and it was liniment in those days too. And it was powerful. It was a very strong sense of smell, and you knew that when you smelt that liniment, she was on. It was on for young and old, and the boys would be in there geeing each other up, or the men they were. I was a boy, and I was just absolutely mesmerised by this whole scenario, the warrior mentality coming out in these guys that were just normal mums and or dads, during the week.
That's it. Had their local jobs.
Absolutely, mate. And they come together for that game on the weekend, and they became my heroes. They became the guys that I aspired to be. I was absolutely captured by the presence of those guys in their hometown, and that had more influence on me than anything at all. And if I mention some of those names from those guys that played, they bring a sense of pride to me straight away. Like we had a guy called Alan Trunks who was just an enormously gifted player and led the way every week, and players like Liam Duggan and Tommy Duggan that played for Queensland, from the bush, and Bobby Dineen was a front rower that you just couldn't budge, and those players really set the standard for me to aspire to.
That's unreal, mate. So from those days, then you went on to Bow Desert?
Yeah, Dad took another transfer to Bow Desert, and moved into a whole different area of competition. I went down there when I was just turned 13 and played in the junior league and went through that process, and once again just hit a patch in my life where we had a very good team of young players, young fellas that were all came together at Bow Desert at the same time, and we had a very inspiring and coach that just gave all of his time for us. He'd come and pick all of us up in the back of his ute, and we'd all get in there like cattle dogs, giggling and laughing and fighting, and he'd take us down to St Mary's to train. And it was freezing, mate. It was it was that cold, you had to run around to keep warm. And then he'd take us all and drop us all home. He'd do that, 2 or 3 times a week, just so that we could get a game of rugby league. And we end up, that team, or that group of guys stuck together through those years. We end up being upgraded to play in the Brisbane competition, which was an amazing thing for Bow Desert, to have that. So we went into the Brisbane A-grade competition. So we started to play against Valleys and Redcliffe and Winnamanly and Tigers, and players like Wally Lewis and Paul Vorton were in those junior league teams. So that gave me then the opportunity to get picked to play for Brisbane. So I made my first Metropolitan rep side for Brisbane when I was in the under-15s. And you won't believe this, mate. Wally Lewis was half-back and I was 5'8".
There you go.
There you go. So I don't think many people could picture me as a 5'8", but I certainly had the worst pass in the game for a 5'8". But that was a great inspiration for me, and I then graduated into the senior league at Bow Desert. Through the Gold Coast competition. Bow Desert were part of that Gold Coast competition. They did, and they had an under-19 team, a reserve grade and an A-grade team. So I was only 16. I was playing under-19s, and then they wanted me to play A-grade at the same time. So I was playing 2 games on a weekend, and I loved it. I just loved it. I loved the the thrill of playing in the under-19s and playing with my teammates, and then getting that opportunity to go up and try and perform at that level where I was playing against men, and I mean men that had ability and could play the game. One of my favourite players from that era was a guy called Eamon Gutenwa. And Eamon, he was just a fantastic player, iconic player, and here I am one day, 17 years of age, lining up against him at Beenleigh at the footy ground at Beenleigh, and I recognised him immediately, and he would have been in his 40s, and I was really cheeky, I said to him, mate, what are you doing? You're a bit too old to be out here, and they're the saddest words I ever uttered in my life, because not long after that I made a break and I could hear him coming. I could feel him coming first, and then I could hear him coming, and he caught me about 2 metres from the sideline, and he just belted me as hard as he could. And I remember he split my lip here, and I had tears coming out of my eyes and blood running down my face. And I stood up and looked at him, and my vision cleared, and I said, holy He said, welcome to A grade, young fella. So it was a lesson I learnt though, mate. I never ever sledged again after that moment. I thought there's always going to be somebody that's going to put you in your place. So I just kept my mouth shut from then on.
Love it. And you know, my connection to that, Chop, is my dad. When we came from Fiji, my dad played rugby, and we came with Eamon and his family.
Wow.
So just goes to show, what a small world,
That gives me goosebumps, mate, because he was one of my childhood heroes.
Geez, you know, like from a young age already, you're sort of mentioning, you know, iconic sort of people, you know, that, you know, I guess help mould and develop you as a young person.
You know, it's really important, Petero, that we remember this stuff. It's really important that we have a historical connection to our game.
I guess from there, is it right? Your dad bought a pub?
He did,
out
at Cunnamulla.
Cunnamulla.
Yeah.
And so you've got
greatest day of your life when your father buys a pub. Absolutely. Go for it. And, so I'd started work by that stage, and you know, the only thing Dad knew about pubs after being a policeman for 26 years was that he liked beer. So he had no idea of how to set it up or pour it or whatever. And fortunately, I'd been working at the Logan and Albert Hotel at Bow Desert. And
Chop, so you were what, about 18?
Yeah, I was actually 18. And he bought the pub, and we went out there, and you know, I'd actually signed a contract with Bow Desert. It was the first contract I'd ever signed in my life, you know, to play senior league, and I'll never forget it because, you know, we're talking back in 1978, and, you know, I signed a contract for $1,000, and I thought I was big time, mate, you know, I thought I was the main man in the world. Anyway, we went out to Cunnamulla, and my idea was I was going to go and teach Dad how to run a pub, you know. And I was out there about 2 weeks, and there was a bit of a shindig happening within the pub, and you know, I began to realise pretty quickly that Dad had no idea, and he wasn't going to pick it up. So it was a bit of fortunate stroke of luck where the local rugby league president and his treasurer and secretary were drinking at the pub, and they came to me, you know, and they said, "Oh, we'd like to offer you a contract to come and play here next year." I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm under contract to Bow Desert already, you know, for $1,000. And well, I never said $1,000, so just under contract. And they said, "How much are they offering you?" And I thought, here's a chance to bump it up. So I said $1,500. And they said, "Well, we'll give you $2,000. And I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, you're a fair income, aren't you?" And they go, "Absolutely." So they went and got a contract. Drew it up. While they're in the bar, here I am, and I'm thinking I can't do this unless I talk to Bow Desert. So I ring Ronnie Willis, who the grounds are named after it, Bow Desert, and he was the man that, you know, earned a contract. I rang and I said, "Ronnie, mate, Dad's not a very good publican, and I'm out here, and they've offered me to come and play, but for that to happen, I'd have to, you know, relinquish my contact with Bow Desert. But if you want me to," he said, "No way in the world. You stay out there and look after your dad, mate." So I doubled my contract in half an hour. I was always intrigued, mate, as to how they would buy a player, and they probably never paid that much for a player before. But I actually said to him, you've never seen me play. I could be the biggest dud in the world. Like, what inspired you to make the offer and then sign me up? And they said, we asked your mother. She reckoned you were a good player.
Thanks, Mum.
Oh, I thought, what mother wouldn't?
Yeah, well, I hope you gave her a percentage of that.
Definitely not. Definitely not. So, so that meant I played at Cunnamulla for that year. And what a year we had. I've got to tell you, mate, bush footy, when you're travelling 3 to 4 hours one way to go and play a game, and then 3 to 4 hours the same way back, you're doing it for love. You're out there, and when the whole community gets behind the team, and you're all leaving a convoy and go to your footy destination and play your game and come home. And that year, they asked me if I'd be the captain, and I took that great pride in that, and led the team. We had a really good team, and we went through. We lost one game, and
in that season.
And they hadn't won the local competition for 19 years, the Wallow Cup, and we played Quilpie in the grand final, and we played at Charleville Showground. It was just amazing to see a whole town go to one other town to watch a game play, and that's when I realised just how important to me and my future that rugby league was going to be. I had a great year that year. I scored 54 tries.
54 tries in the season?
And I'll never forget one game I scored 6 and the winger outside me, Keithy Stewart, scored 7. And we scored 13 tries between us.
That's gold.
And we beat Augathala, and we beat them something like 49-1. They're only 3-point tries there. And the 1 point came from a field goal. And I can't believe that we come back on at half time, we're beating them, and the ball goes to the Augathala 5'8" or half back, and he just potted a field goal, 1 pointer. And he's jumping and cheering and clapping. I'm thinking, what's going on? And he said, I've won the double. So he won. It must have went in at half time and checked it out. And he backed himself and kicked the goal. So they were funny years, and we loved it.
That's bush footy.
Absolutely. That was the greatest fun of rugby league in a year that I had. We won the premiership, and the town was just so excited. And I suppose on the back of that, I got a call from Tommy Duggan, one of my mates, one of my childhood heroes, who was at Valleys. And he said, we'd like you to come and play at Valleys, mate. Wow. So
you've gone from that amazing experience, and then now it's that taking that next step in your footy journey.
So, I played for the Gold Coast on the year before in 77, and I played for Cunnamulla in 78. We won the premiership, and next thing I'm going down to Valleys, and I was always a Valleys supporter as well as a kid.
You go on to play for Queensland from Valleys?
Absolutely, The first interstate game I missed out. I actually, there's a whole other story there where I ended up at the game with Billy Johnston and another mate of ours, a bloke called Peter Chute. And Chute lost his leg when he was about 15 in an accident thing, but he was a hell of a bloke, and we had a hell of a lot of fun. And Billy and I, Billy was from Cunnamulla, and I was out there, and we ended up at the ground. I don't even know how it happened, but anyway, as we left, we heard this almighty yell. We looked behind us, and here's Chudy tumbling down the terrace at Lang Park, and his leg had flown off, and it was doing cartwheels in the air, and the crowd was horrified. We had to race over and put his leg back on, and then headed over to the clubhouse. And it was the funniest night, seriously. And you wouldn't believe it, I played in the next interstate game.
Mate,
I got picked and played in the next game. Here I am out there,
So you've gone from out the hill with the Cunnamulla lads.
My mate losing his leg.
And
I played in the following game.
Unbelievable, mate. State of Origin, our very first State of Origin at Lang Park, and you run out there, and you're lacing your boots up with, I guess, someone who's had such a huge impact in your life, and obviously your time at Redcliffe in Big Artie. Walk me through that.
Look, mate, that was one of the most incredible experiences that I could, ever relate to in my life. And once again, fate just unfolded for me and made this memory for me. And being involved with Arthur, just the first time he ever walked into the training session at Corbett Park at Brothers, this enormous, gifted charismatic athlete walks in, and I'm in love.
Yeah.
I'm just man. Where does just
the aura?
Absolutely, I'd have died for him on the spot, and he addressed us, and he convinced us through some simple words that he was fair income, and it was his only opportunity to play for his state, and he was serious about it. And if we weren't serious about it, then there's the gate, boys. See yourselves out. So he put it on the line. He made it clear. He held us accountable to represent our great state, and I never lost that. I never lost that mindset. I thought, how important is it for him? And then I thought about his cultural background and how he'd risen through, a lot of barriers that most people probably couldn't find their way through. But he did it with courage, determination, respect, resilience, pride. And I thought, he's asking me to display the same characteristics on the field. How could I say no? So I went out there ready to kill, ready to die. And, I got the opportunity then to get prepared for the game beside him. And, he chucked his bag down, I chucked down my bag beside him, and then it became this massive awakening of a giant who deliberately done the things that he did before a game, and he got himself there, and he got his jersey, and he ripped his jersey on, and he had this old pantyhose stocking or whatever full of resin, and then he just got it and he pumped his chest and his arms down this resin so the ball would stick. And under that Lang Park grandstand, the old grandstand, that was an amazing sanctuary for a start. And here he is, I'm standing beside him, and he's just pumping his chest like King Kong. And this cloud of resin probably caused lung cancer for me now, but it's all unfolding around him. And then he reaches into his bag, and he's got a big jar of Vaseline, and he digs his fingers in it. And he just drives it up the side of his nose, and another big one up. And then he's wiped his cheeks like this, and I thought, but we're going to war.
He's going battle.
We're going to war. This is ceremonial. We're going to war, and wherever he goes, I'm going with him. And then he just looked at us all, and he said, "You ready?" And we all just, yep. He said, "Well, let's go." And that was it. We ran on, and when he ran out, Queensland came alive. He just lit a stadium that never stopped burning. It's still burning from his memory.
Mate, goosebumps, mate. Goosebumps, mate. Look at him. It's unreal.
Yeah, no, it's amazing stuff, and I'm just so lucky, so privileged that, I had a couple of parents and support from my family, my wife, and that allowed me to find all this within my lifetime. I feel so grateful.
From that moment on, it's such an iconic moment in our game's history, and for you to be a part of that, what was it in that moment you think that meant so much to Queenslanders? That lit that fire, and as you said, that fire's still burning now to this day.
Well, Petero, it's for me, it's a simple thing. We had a man that was capable of changing the world, in our world. And he came along at the right time, and he was given an opportunity when many people thought he was probably well past his best. And he grasped that opportunity, and I just firmly believe that Arthur had something about him that you couldn't touch, you couldn't describe. He knew what that meant, and Queensland knew what that meant, and it was an iconic period for us. We started to believe in ourselves. And he led that charge. And that footy team, whether I was in it or not, gave this state something to believe in. And it's continued to do that for 40-something years. And it's been made up of the same people as me. Kids that came from the bush, kids that got their opportunity, came to the city from the country, and understood what their responsibility was each time they pulled that maroon jersey on. And we're still doing it. We're still doing it, mate. And we've all played a part in that.
Some of my greatest memories of being an Origin player were being involved with you as our team manager. I debuted in 2001, and having someone like yourself, in Origin camp. I guess for myself and so many of the younger players who needed to understand, the full history of, what the Queensland jersey meant, and the legacy that was laid down for players like yourself and those players that went before us. It was so great to have you as our team manager, mate. And
thank you.
Yeah, I had so many good times, mate. And what was that like experience?
Just amazing. It became came about again through chance, through Tosser.
Yep.
And Tosser was a great visionary, not only for Redcliffe. I mean, look at where they are now, but for Queensland and himself. And he looked into the future and he thought, how are we going to sustain this? And he understood that we needed to bring people in that had that were in touch with the game, that were in touch with the players, and not just iconic people for the sake of it. That we're getting a leg up for nothing.
Yep.
And he was adamant that was how it's going to be, and he brought me into the team. And mate, he financed my position in the team the first year.
Yeah, is that right? Eh?
And then I became the manager for the next 12 years until I decided I'd hand the reins over to the magnificent Boxhead.
Steve Brothers,
yeah. Interestingly enough, it was a nervous moment for him. He felt like he wasn't quite ready, and I said, you know what, mate, you'll never ever feel like you're quite ready to take that job on. It's an enormous responsibility, but I can tell you are. And the rest is history.
Now, I did have Shane Webke in the car yesterday. Now, I've got to finish on this note.
He's lightweight, mate. I could drop him at any time, at any stage of training, and he knew it. Don't worry about that.
Mate, one of my best, another great memory was when you two big hooers would get together and, mate, it was all on, mate. How did the whole wrestle thing start? And
well,
how many times did you beat him?
You know Shane. I beat him every time. There's not once that he beat me, except that once he actually nearly killed me. It was outside the lift at the Stanford Plaza, and for whatever he got me on at a weak moment. I never forget it because he broke me good 4X watch. I've never forgiven him.
Not the good one.
No, and he flipped me, and as we went down, there was a coffee table there, and my head just grazed the corner of the table, and we both ourselves. We were laying on the ground looking at each other, and he said, "Jesus, that was close." I said, "A lot closer for me than for you, you big galoot." So that was his only real. It wasn't even a victory. We ended up both at the same time, but no, what a great player he was for Queensland. He gave everything that he had. I mean, he didn't have 1 ounce of energy left after any game he ever played, and he wore the responsibility of playing for his people in the state of Queensland with the greatest intention and never ever let anybody down.
No, that's it, man. That's it. And in terms of your club footy, Manly?
Yeah, I went to another year at Redcliffe. We missed the grand final, like I said.